September of last year, an FBI special agent, his name was Steve Friend, he filed a whistleblower complaint with the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. He alleged that senior officials in the Biden administration were using the FBI to target political opponents of the Democratic Party. Specifically, Friend said the FBI leaders would often use heavy armed SWAT teams to show a use of force to arrest supporters of Donald Trump, purely for political reasons. And Steve Friend would know because he was on the FBI SWAT team. If that's true, it's illegal. In a DOJ that cared about equal justice, it would trigger an immediate investigation. But when Steve Friend filed his complaint, the DOJ did not give him any whistleblower protections, which are required by federal law. Instead, the DOJ retaliated against Steve Friend. They escorted him out of the Daytona Beach field office. They put him on unpaid leave and pressured him to resign. He left the agency the day he testified publicly about all of this. He's a brave guy. No one in the Democratic Party has said a word about what happened to Steve Friend. They do not care. They want to bury the story. We do not. And it's not hard to see why they wanted to bury the story. He is a big political problem for the Democratic Party. Now, the interesting thing. Democrats in Congress are starting to come out in defense of a different whistleblower inside the IRS, you may have heard. The IRS whistleblower says he has had evidence the senior officials in the Biden administration improperly intervened on an ongoing investigation, a criminal investigation, into this guy named Hunter Biden. That investigation concerned Hunter Biden's taxes. I don't think he pays them. The IRS whistleblower says Merrick Garland may have lied under oath about whether federal prosecutors are being allowed to prosecute any tax violations they find. Hey, it's been about 5 years, right? Here's Senator Chris Coons of Delaware saying the IRS whistleblower, unlike Steve Friend at the FBI, needs whistleblower protections.
CBS interviewed earlier this week an attorney for an IRS agent who is seeking whistleblower status from Congress to share information he says would contradict sworn testimony to Congress by a senior political appointee regarding the investigation into Hunter Biden. Do you think it's worth looking into the possibility of undue influence here?
Look, anyone who comes forward and seeks whistleblower protection status should be given that status. That's part of what we've put in place over many years.
See the little bug in the corner? It said CBS. CBS is covering the story. Let's go back to the quote. He says, anyone who comes forward and seeks whistleblower protection status should be given that status. So the IRS whistleblower should get protection suddenly. That, according to Chris Coons, who, by the way, replaced Joe Biden in Delaware. But the FBI whistleblower gets suspended without pay, and ultimately he's forced to resign. What could explain that? Here's a thought. It makes sense if Democrats view the FBI whistleblower as a threat to their ability to punish their political opponents using federal law enforcement. They want to keep doing that forever. No matter who is in the White House, they'll never give up that power. But the IRS whistleblower is a very different animal. He is a threat to Joe Biden personally. He can expose the corruption of Joe Biden and his administration if the IRS whistleblower succeeds. The Biden administration is done. And it's becoming obvious Democrats want him done. They want Joe Biden gone. Here is Chuck Todd of NBC, not exactly a conservative guy, opening up his show yesterday.
As Biden prepares to formally announce his campaign for a second term early this week, just 1 in 4 Americans believe he should run for re-election. 70% say he shouldn't run. 53% of 2020 Biden voters say he shouldn't run. 64% of Democrats who voted for Sanders or Warren in the 2020 primaries think he shouldn't run. And 76% of voters under 35 think he shouldn't run. And what's the top concern for that? We asked voters. We didn't prompt them. We said, why don't you think he should run? Well, these were the responses. It almost is all about his age and his ability to do the job.
It's not hard to see why Democrats are turning on Joe Biden. I can't believe that's NBC, by the way. He's 80. He'll be 82 if he wins again, 86 when he's done of his second term if he wins again. And it's becoming obvious he can't do the job now. Watch.
It's really very, very dull when after all these years in public life, you're known for two things: Ray-Ban sunglasses and chocolate chip ice cream. A very dull president. We have 1,000 billionaires in America. You know the average tax rate they pay? 8, E-I-G-H%. 8%. As you walk into my office in the Oval Office in the United States Capitol, Guess what? You know who founded and designed and built the White House? An Irishman. No, not a joke. You're a Biden. Yeah, what the hell is Biden? You know, I mean, I'm like Anyway, so thank you all. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done.
So Joe Biden thinks the Oval Office is in the Capitol. He can't spell the word 8, got to put a T, and he wants to lick the world. Forget hostile interviews. Joe Biden can't even take questions from children, Irish children anymore. Here he was earlier this month explaining the keys to success.
Any of you guys want to ask me any questions? What do you want to ask me? Oh, Air Force. Look at this. Air Force One. Right here. That's pretty cool, man.
Hey, Dad, he's got a question.
What's your question?
Top acceptance exam.
What's the top what? What's the top success? Well, making sure that we don't all have COVID. What are they talking about?
That's a success. Like, what's the key to success?
What's the key to success? There was a guy named Jesse Helms from South Carolina, North Carolina. And he was a very conservative guy who was not very crazy about African Americans when he got here. We always had fights.
Yep, 100 to the rescue. When in doubt, kids love Jesse Helms stories. They always will. Despite his obvious inability to serve as president so far, numerous media outlets are reporting tonight that Joe Biden will indeed run again. He's disregarding Barack Obama's advice, perhaps, and he is pressing forward. That is not a surprise. He's been saying this for a while.
Some people ask whether you are fit for the job. And when you hear that, I wonder what you think.
Watch me. Looking at your child, you know that needs an instant to live, and not having the money to pay for it. Not a joke. Think about it. Think about what you'd think about. You're going to make that all cement. You're going to use that as basis to build on, because you need security, you need stability for what you have on top, and you're going to build up stories beyond. I mean, this is incredible. This is the United States of America, for God's sake.
Mr. President, thank you.
How would you say your mental focus is?
Oh, it's focused. I haven't, look, I have trouble even saying to myself my own head the number of years. I no more think of myself as being as old as I am than fly.
So, what would a 2024 Joe Biden campaign look like? Here's a preview. Here's Joe Biden, 6 years younger than he is today.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up. He said, "You walk out with that chain." And you walk to the car and say, "You may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head."
Another moving story with kids around. Joe Biden is doing what his masters in the Democratic Party have feared. He is running again. Maybe that's why they're rushing to protect the IRS whistleblower. Now, if Democrats can't stop Joe Biden, maybe the IRS whistleblower he just might be able to do it. Vivek Ramaswamy is one of the many candidates running against Joe Biden, but first he's got to win the primary. He joins us now. Vivek, I know we got a big announcement about your book coming out, but first things first, your thoughts about what might be happening on the left.
Yeah, so look, I actually see it, Brian. The essence of what's happening is it is a myth that Joe Biden is actually the one running for president. It is the managerial industrial complex that's actually behind him. And his cognitive failures, that's not just a bug. That is a feature. In the same way that it is for John Fetterman as a U.S. senator, the administrative state, the managerial class, can actually control its puppets more effectively when those puppets are literally unable to think. It does strike me closer to a form of elder abuse than it does to the hubris of Joe Biden. That's really what I see in this. And whoever wins this nomination, I'm running to win the Republican nomination. I don't see myself as then running against Joe Biden. I see myself as running against the managerial class with a puppet in front of it, much like the Wizard of Oz portrays an image. It's a false projection of the reality that's actually behind him. That's actually what I see, Brian. And I think that once we wake up to that, we realize this is the managerial class versus the everyday citizen.
I mean, you saw it in Pennsylvania. You got a world-renowned surgeon who lost to a man that's clearly not functioning in Senator Fetterman, and it doesn't seem to matter. 5% of the American public want to see a rematch between President Trump and President Biden. Only 35% want to see Trump run again, too. What does that mean to you as a candidate?
Well, look, I think I look at the Democratic Party, first of all, saying that it's not going to host debates. Look at how they're protecting that incumbent. I think we in the Republican Party need to be the opposite of that. We need to lead the way with actual vision. Ask the question of the what and the why. Stop obsessing over who we prop up through the question of the who. That's for the Democratic Party. And so what I see as the opportunity here is for us to actually lead in the conservative movement with vision, Brian. We've talked enough about bashing the Biden agenda. What's our own vision? To me, it's a vision grounded on the basic concepts the country was built on: the individual, the family, the nation, God. Let's start talking more about those things. And if we're successful in painting the vision of what it means to be American, I think we win this election in a landslide. I'm the first millennial ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. Biden's literally over twice my age and then some. I think that's going to be a matchup that I look forward to on the debate stage with Biden if I'm to get there.
Right. But real quick, also, this is a big day for you. Actually, tomorrow, you have a new book coming out. It's called Capitalist Punishment. How would you characterize what we're going to get tomorrow? We're going to be able to buy.
Yeah, so I actually wrote this book long before I knew I was running for president. It goes into the details of the ESG movement, how the Biden administration and the left uses companies and asset managers and financial institutions to do through the back door what they could not get done through the front door under the Constitution. You wonder what's happening at Budweiser. You wonder what's happening in corporate America when they actually adopt these woke policies. It's because there's puppet masters behind the scenes like BlackRock and State Street who are imposing these ESG agendas using your money to do it. And so the subtitle of the book is How Wall Street is Using Your Money to Create a Country You Didn't Vote For. That's how I got the title Capitalist Punishment. And even though I'd written the book beforehand, I really wanted to put it out even though we're in a campaign. I'm donating all my proceeds actually to a nonprofit that's pursuing litigation against the likes of American Express. But I think that's what we need to educate Americans on in this country.
Hey, Vivek, you could capture this slogan, vote for Vivek, I won't take away your car or your gas oven. That would be a change because that's what's happening. Every day we're losing something else.
Yeah, you want vote for Vivek is abandoning the climate religion. That's a big part of what it is, abandon the climate cult. We describe it on our website, Brian, pretty well, Vivek2024.com.
Right.
You want to see how we take America first to the next level? Let's start with abandoning that climate cult. And ESG is a big part of that cancer.
Well, I'll tell you what, anyone on the debate stage with you better bring their A game. Vivek, thanks so much. Congratulations on your great start.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
You got it. Meanwhile, there are new signs tonight that the crime epidemic under Joe Biden is completely out of control. Kevin Corke has that story. Kevin.
Evening, Brian. This is interesting, actually. You know, until recently, the armored car industry frankly catered almost exclusively to the people you would expect, the wealthy, elite, and volatile third world nations. You know, but thanks to a spike in crime in America, well, in many of America's largest cities, more and more Americans than ever before are actually having their vehicles bulletproofed. Take the story of Armor Max. It's actually a bulletproofing business based in the great state of Utah. Now, the company once centered on clients from places like Mexico and Nigeria and South Africa and the Middle East, but now company executives report that Chicago and Atlanta and New Orleans and Memphis and L.A. have all become hotbeds of bulletproofing demand. Now you may be asking, why now? Well, just consider this week in upstate New York. You know the story of that young woman who was shot dead in her car after making a wrong turn down a private driveway. And earlier this month, there was also something that happened over in the Bay Area. A little 5-year-old traveling down the freeway with her parents. A little girl was struck tragically by a bullet that pierced their car. So a lot of people are thinking about this. But as you can also imagine, BK, high security comes at, well, a fairly high price. In fact, it costs about $38,500 for a basic windows and doors package for handgun protection. But if you need protection against, say, something high-powered like an AR-15 or an M16, well, that hikes the price by roughly $10,000. Again, that's all depending on the size of the vehicle. But I think it's also fair to say it's a sign of the times, BK.
Kevin, it's no secret you're a sports guy. At the end of the show, we have a big trade to go over, so I want you to stay tuned.
Yes.
I hope you have cable in your office.
I'll be here.
All right,
You
good
got
job. Kevin Kors, thanks. Meanwhile, another legacy of Joe Biden's first term is how he has completely destroyed the border. Our next guest is running for Senate to secure the border, and he joins us next. He's on the positive side of law and order. Welcome back. Glad you're here. President Biden has opened up the southern border. You know that. Now, so many illegal immigrants are streaming into this country that even Democrats are beginning to complain about it. Case in point, Mayor Eric Adams, just across the way. He once pledged to make New York a sanctuary city forever. He now says he is out of room for migrants. He wants the federal government to start paying. Washington, D.C. The mayor recently declared a public emergency over the number of illegal immigrants coming in from Arizona and Texas. You think? Mark Lamb says he can bring an end to the madness. He is right now a sheriff in Arizona. He is watching it, and he's been virtually helpless to stop it because the policies allow it, and now he's going to run for Senate. Sheriff, great to see you. Why do you think you could do a better job in Washington than you can do at the border?
You know, Brian, thanks for having me on tonight. This is something we deal with every day. As a matter of fact, I was just down there on the border with my helicopter crew and Border Patrol. We were flying around doing missions all day, ran into about 35 women and children that had just crossed over the border that we stopped and turned over to Border Patrol. Small women and children. 3 of these kids had no parents with them. We were chasing scouts out of the mountains. We were tearing up all their stuff that they had, taking their solar panels, their batteries. I mean, look, this is what's going on every day. And so what Arizona needs is a proven conservative fighter, somebody that's been doing it, that knows how to do it. Let's get back to the Trump era policies for the border security, and let's build off of those. But we have to secure our borders.
So, and Sheriff, I've had a chance to talk to you a lot because I see your sincerity and you're working so hard to give us the true story of the border. Helped a lot of our reporters tell the true story as well. But I can't help but notice from afar, in Arizona, they put a Democrat in charge, in Katie Hobbs, who took those containers right out at the behest of the federal government. That was a makeshift fence. And then they put 2 Democratic senators and a Democratic governor. Does that say the people of Arizona don't care?
No, the people of Arizona do care. I talk to them every day, and whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents, they're looking for somebody who knows what they're doing, that knows how to do this job. They want that proven conservative fighter, which is why I've decided to run. I love being sheriff, but at the same time, I love this state of Arizona, and I love this country, and I feel like I'm very well suited to deal with the border crisis issue, which is human trafficking, drug trafficking, fentanyl deaths in America. We've got to deal with that. Right. We've got to deal with the rule of law issue, and they want somebody that knows what they're doing, and I think they're hungry for somebody like myself who's that proven conservative.
Very interesting what's developed. Senator Sinema said, I don't want to be a Democrat, I'm an independent. Open up a lane for Democrats to go get that nomination, take her out. And then Republicans will have their own lane. Gives a real opportunity for someone like you, and I believe Kari Lake is thinking about jumping in too.
You know, I've run 2 successful elections as a sheriff, and I've learned that you got to focus on your race. Here's what I want. I want to win the vote of the American people. I think Arizonans and Americans are tired of politicians who try to win by telling them how bad their opponent is. I want people to actually want to vote for me. So I hope they would go and support me at sherifflambforsenate.com. We got to raise money. We got to go out and we've got to contend with these Democrats who typically outraise Republicans by 4 times. So please, if you're a freedom-loving American, go to Sheriff Lamb for Senate.
It's hard to imagine every American not thinking this is one of the top issues that America faces. We got a rein in the border. Title 42 about to evaporate in 3 weeks. And you believe another 1 million people are going to pour into our country. They better have a plan. And so far, there's no indication they do. Mark Lamb, best of luck. Sheriff Lamb, best of luck in your quest to be senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. God bless.
All right, we move ahead. A new report says ISIS is using Afghanistan as a staging ground for terrorism. You think? More on that in just a moment. Thanks for watching.
Is watching.
Yesterday, special forces evacuated the U.S. Embassy over in Sudan. The good news is we got everybody out. 100 troops and 3 helicopters carry out the operation. It was brilliant. And this is amid the ongoing fighting between the Sudanese military forces that is still going on right now. There are new reports tonight that China is hoping to mediate the conflict. China's already brokered a peace deal with Saudi Arabia and Iran. Still don't know how that happened. What would this mean for the U.S. influence in the region if China basically has the predominant influence in the area? Congressman Michael Waltz represents Florida, former Green Beret. Congressman, how important was that military operation last night to get our people out of the embassy?
Well, Brian, I want to give my fellow special operators and the people, the intelligence community and others behind the scenes, real kudos for pulling off a great operation. I mean, just take a step back, though. Why does Sudan matter so much? Well, number one, it's the third largest country in Africa. It has huge amounts of natural resources, including gold, which is one of the reasons Russia's so interested. And thirdly, it has a port on the Red Sea that 10% of the global shipping, of global trade, passes by as it gets to the Suez Canal. So this is an important country in geopolitics. The Russians are there in a big way because they want the gold and natural resources, and China's there in a big way because they want the same, and they want to control access to the Suez Canal that 10% of global trade passes through.
Congressman, this is our fourth embassy we've abandoned, and I'm glad everybody's safe, and they got to make the decision. And now we're on the ground trying to get some of our 16,000 Americans on the ground out. And this operation's ongoing in the middle of a civil war, it seems, where over 400 are dead, and I think most of the hospitals have been shut down. This is important. But there's no proof that China left their embassy or Russia left theirs. In fact, there's a presence of the Wagner group there, that mercenary force on the ground. So this is the same Sudan that was part of the Abraham Accords, wasn't it, during the previous administration, brought into the family of Middle Eastern nations recognizing Israel?
Yeah, you've got China in there, as the superpower, as the mediator. But just 2 years ago, Brian, Sudan was part of the Abraham Accords. It was cutting deals with Israel. It was part of President Trump's Middle East peace plan, something that nobody said could be done, something that any other president would have received a Nobel Peace Prize for. And now it's become completely unraveled. The United States is abandoning the scene. And once again, like in so many other places, you have China and Russia filling the void. And, oh, by the way, we pulled all of our government people out with Americans left behind. And I'm hearing from the same groups, the same groups that had to go rescue Americans in Afghanistan, groups like Dynamo, Allied Airlift, and others, are now being asked by the State Department to go in on their own dime to go help Americans get out. I mean, it's just par for the course for this administration's foreign policy that has the world on fire.
You mean the men who cash in their 401ks to help out people in Afghanistan are being asked to go help Americans out in Sudan for free? Don't we have a government for that in operations? Incredible.
Right.
Go ahead, real quick.
I asked one of them, are you getting any money from the State Department for this? They said, no, we're going on our own dime. But you know what? Americans are left behind, and we never, ever leave Americans behind. We're going to go, even though it's on their own money. Because they're just great Americans.
Right. And by the way, just a great generation of warfighters. And it looks like Russia's trying to dominate with the Wagner Group, Africa. We need a plan to counter it. The USS Truxtun is in the area, destroyer, to hopefully hold on to that port. Thanks so much, Congressman, for all you do.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Meanwhile, the evacuation of the embassy in Sudan is obviously reminding a lot of people of President Biden's disastrous exit from Afghanistan. The consequences of that debacle are now becoming clear. According to the Washington Post, Afghanistan has once again become a terrorist training ground. The Post report says those classified leaks, remember, those documents that are now out thanks to that server called Discord. Well, apparently it's okay to publish those documents now. Pete Hegseth is host of Fox and Friends Weekend. He's also a veteran of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Pete, this should not surprise any of us, should it?
No, what do we think is going to happen? Jihadists are going to carry out their jihad. And when you embarrassingly abandon a mission in a way that creates a void, they take advantage of it. And listen, the war in Afghanistan needed to end. I'm a recovering neocon mugged by reality. Two things can be true at once. The courage of our warfighters on the ground was amazing, what I witnessed in Iraq and Afghanistan. But the fallout from those two nation-building exercises was disastrous. And then on top of it, Joe Biden decided to leave without a plan, abandoning Americans on the ground and handing our weapons to the Taliban. What did we think would happen? So as a result, their fellow Sunnis in ISIS found their way to Afghanistan, just like Al-Qaeda, and they're going to seek our destruction continually. I mean, it's so obvious that it's almost predictable. It's completely predictable.
Yeah, I appreciate you've been there up close and personal. We always spar about this, but I believe we kept a shell of a force in there, hold on to Bagram, along with NATO, keep a looking glass on China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan. Staying in that neighborhood would have worked on for us. Now we find out the Islamic State had goals. They wanted to attack the World Cup in 2022. They wanted to go attack FIFA offices as well. So we have a great idea. According to reports, we have teamed up with the Taliban again to go after ISIS-K.
Well, Brian, we teamed up with the Taliban for the security of our soldiers around the Kabul airfield. I mean, we were relying on them, and 13 Americans died and dozens more were wounded. This is the folly, the foolishness, the recklessness of the Biden administration, which doesn't understand the real nature of our enemy. We may disagree on the size of the footprint, Brian, but we recognize that between the Communist Chinese and the Iranians and others and the Islamists, they seek our destruction. The question is how you defeat them. And listen, there are either petrostates or dictatorships or Sharia law countries in the Middle East, amongst Muslim countries. In Afghanistan's not going to be a petrostate. So will it take a strong man? Problem is it's controlled by the Taliban. And so whatever we can do to hold back ISIS-K, we should do. But trying to rebuild a nation in our image didn't work. And I think we should learn from that.
Right. The rare earth went right to China the day we left, which made them feel as though they loved us. Yeah, they loved us out of there. Now they're in control of Bagram, too. Pete, especially, I think you represent something that's underappreciated. One of the finest war-fighting generations in our history. Don't ever think you're not appreciated, and let everybody know, especially Memorial Day, just a few weeks away. Thanks so much, Pete.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Meanwhile, the medical establishment in the country has a new solution for obesity in children. And it has nothing to do with exercise or eating well. More on that story next. Welcome back to Fox News Tonight. After the COVID lockdowns, more children are obese than ever before. Now, hundreds of kids are getting surgery to fix the problem. According to the Wall Street Journal, I don't know if you saw this story, it really struck me. Bariatric surgery was performed on more than 2,000 children, and mostly teens last year. What's happening to teaching these kids to eat healthier, to exercise? Is that possible today? Dr. Mark Siegel joins us now. Dr. Siegel, I had no idea that teens were eligible for this type of surgery. Is it the right thing to do?
No, not to this extent. It should be for really extreme cases. But the American Academy of Pediatrics came out in January and said, for severe obesity, let's put Ozempic on the table, Wegovy. Those are the drugs that change your hormones, which we don't know the long-term effects in kids. And let's put surgery on the table. Brian, the kind of surgery we're talking about is now a sleeve where you cut a piece of the stomach out. And look, as an internist, I don't want my teens to turn into obese adults who have diabetes, who have high blood pressure, who have heart disease, who have sleep apnea. But there's other things to do first. During the pandemic, we took away gym classes. We had everybody stay at home, right? Didn't they say stay at home? The diet was fast food diets as everybody got depressed and couldn't go out and couldn't play. The play went down. So you, as someone that was a soccer star in college and has taught all three of your kids to exercise regularly, all three of my kids were overweight, dramatically overweight. All of them exercised it off. And you know how they did that? It wasn't that you burn off the calories. It's that you signal the brain through exercise to decrease hunger. The hormones change. That's what we've got to get back to. What's happened to gym classes? They're gone.
First off, how would you describe this surgery? They actually go in and just cut a piece of the stomach off, and they make it smaller so kids will get the sensation of being full quicker?
Exactly right. And they put a sleeve in there to stop the hormones from signaling more eating more.
different from lap band surgery?
Yeah, well, lap band surgery is less invasive. That's just tying a rubber band around. But they've stopped doing that on teens, period, because it has too many side effects. This one has less side effects long term, but you can't get your stomach back.
What do you say to people who say the body gets defensive? For example, if you start losing weight through exercise or whether it's a diet plan, the body will look to hold on to that weight because it has a sense of trying to stay the way it is. And this is the way to jumpstart the body, to teach it something different.
I don't think it's the way to do it. I think what you just described elegantly is actually what exercise does. I think exercise teaches the body a different mindset. When you drink a lot of water after you exercise, you don't then think food. You don't think food, and you want less food, and you crave less food. So there's more natural ways to do this. It's with a more plant-based diet, with a lot more exercise and a lot more water. Now, I'm not saying that this is never, ever needed, but this should be a last resort. The same health officials that were telling us to be locked down for this virus forever are now telling us, whoops, let's have surgery on our teens. I put that 2 and 2 together, and I don't like the conclusion.
1/5 of kids are obese before the pandemic, and that surged after. It's sad. No kid, you hate it when your kid's overweight. There's nothing good about it, but you don't believe this is the answer.
I want to say one last thing. We left out the word depression. We made our kids very depressed during the pandemic, and you know what they do when they're depressed? They binge eat.
Like everybody else.
Absolutely.
Dr. Siegel, I started the day with you, and I'm ending it with
Great
you.
to
Thanks
see you
so
again,
much.
Brian.
Actually, and you do have 2 suits, because that's a different suit, right?
No, same one.
Is it really?
But it's been cleaned in the meantime.
It's amazing. What kind of budget do you have?
Great
All
to
right.
see you.
All right, thanks, UC, Doctor. Appreciate it. Meanwhile, first it was plastic straws, then it was gas ovens. Now the New York Times just published an op-ed telling us to stop eating meat. The mayor of New York had this idea, Eric Adams. He's declared war on meat and dairy. This is from a few days ago.
1 in every 5 metric tons of carbon dioxide our city emits comes from food. But all food is not created equal. The vast majority of food that is contributing to our emission crises lies in meat and dairy products. We already know that a plant-powered diet is better for your physical and mental health, and I am living proof of that. But the reality is that thanks to this new inventory, we're finding out it is better for the planet.
Right. Shoplifters, we're focusing on meat for now. You're on your own. Mark Morano is the author of The Great Reset, Global Elites and the Permanent Lockdown, joins us now. Mark, I'll tell you, a few years ago we'd laugh at this. Now I feel like it's becoming a reality.
Yeah, as I say, first they came for your energy, then they came for your gas-powered cars, your freedom of movement, your cheap flights. Now they're coming for your food. And what the Mayor Adams just laid out there was a carbon footprint tracker for all New Yorkers. They're going to just be monitoring what you eat. What's coming next are the restrictions. We're already seeing it globally with the net zero commitments. They're going after high-yield agriculture, trying to collapse it. We saw the disaster, what happened in Sri Lanka. And you also have Bill Gates, according to NBC News, America's #1 single farmland owner. And his goal is to get us to eat his billions of dollars invested in lab-grown synthetic beef made from the stem cells of animals and literally put in a steel vat and printed on a 3D printer. Not making that up. So the fix is in, and this will only happen if we allow it, but they are going after our modern diet. You will eat nothing and be happy, according to this plan.
So people are concerned about the flatulization of cows.
Yes.
So don't have cows. Kill the cows we have, don't eat it, and don't make more cows, right?
Yes, and there's been scientists out there saying methane is completely overblown as a greenhouse gas, #1. You have Prince Charles trying to fund a startup, or I guess he's King Charles now, but fund a startup that puts literally face masks on cows, almost like a COVID, medical mask, on a cow to try to capture the methane, and they have devices for the other end too. This is crazy. What this is a revolution of the powers that be. They're always looking for reasons why the rest of us can't be free. So now they're going after rice production. There was a big story in major media about rice causing all this global warming and emissions. They're going after the meat. It's a way to make everything a problem in a climate emergency. So therefore, they have to be in charge of all this food. They're not really going to try to ban it, but they want to take over the means of production so that the rest of us don't destroy the earth. We have to be managed. And that's really what we're looking at.
So let me say, we can't get China to stop using coal. We'll have a lot of success telling them to stop with the rice.
That's right. Rice, which has been around for thousands of years now, is suddenly a problem. And yeah, you're right. All of this benefits China, by the way. The green energy, the EV. China passed the U.S. and South Korea as the #1 global exporter of cars. So they're benefiting greatly from this green agenda. And you can believe they're set. By the way, China is in competition with Bill Gates for buying up American farmland right now. And I'm not sure who you want to win that battle, actually, China or Bill Gates, because Bill Gates has an agenda, too.
Yeah, and no one likes it. Mark Morano, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We need some pushback, and you're doing it. Meanwhile, straight ahead, a blockbuster trade sent shockwaves through the NFL. Not that it was a surprise, but it actually happened. Jets, Packers, quarterback, famous, doesn't like vaccines. That's a riddle. Hopefully, we'll solve it when we return. My attempt at a riddle. I don't know haikus.
Streaming.
Aaron Rodgers spent almost 20 years as quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, you might have noticed. He stirred up a lot of controversy with his opposition to the vaccine mandates. Who didn't? Now Aaron Rodgers' run in Green Bay is over. He was just traded hours ago to the New York Jets along with the 15th pick in this year's draft, a 2023 fifth-round pick. The Packers get the 13th pick, a 2023 second-round pick, a sixth-round pick, and a conditional second-round pick for next year, depending on how much he plays. Jay Glazer is one of the best sports reporters that ever was and still is. Author of Unbreakable, now out on paperback, which makes it bendable. You got to get it. Jay, every time I think of a big trade, I think of Jay Glazer. Jay, who got the better of this, the Jets or the Packers?
Look, I think the Jets did, because if you think of the talent they have over there, the one thing they're missing is a quarterback. And they have been missing that for a couple of years now. But, man, they got a great young running back in Breece Hall. They got a great young wide receiver there in Garrett Wilson. Their defense was phenomenal last year. Just missing that quarterback position. And bringing a guy like Aaron Rodgers in fills that position. And listen, I don't think he's going to be – I know Brett Favre did the same thing 15 years ago. Two totally different guys. We can't look at it and go, well, Brett went. So that's what same thing's going to happen to Aaron. I just don't see that. You
used to work the locker rooms for the New York Post, and you know that you guys could be very. That's absolutely. I was a lot cooler then. You can be very dogged and determined, and sometimes direct. Is Aaron Rodgers ready for the New York media every single day, asking about how he tapes his ankles and his vaccine and his beard and his State Farm commercials, and how come he had 2 incompletions last game?
I think there's 2 answers to that. I think he's going to relish in it because he does love the attention. I think he's going to thrive in it, but I think everybody's going to tick him off, and then he's going to thrive in everybody ticking him off. And that's where Aaron kind of needs to almost pick fights and use that. So look, the Packers, right, drafted Jordan Love, didn't tell him they were drafting Jordan Love. He goes out and has a couple MVP seasons. This also, he's going to use this, I think, to fire him up a lot more. And I think, Packer fans are trying to say right now, oh, he's washed up, he's 40 years old, he's been a problem, he's been a headache and all that. He's still a pretty damn good quarterback. So for a team like the Jets, who are still, listen, when you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, life is miserable. It's awful. You look like you can't coach, you look like you can't pick players, and all of a sudden you get a quarterback, suddenly you can coach, suddenly you can pick players. Life is way better when you have a quarterback.
And does he have motivation at this age? Remember, he had to go into darkness for 3 days to decide if he wanted to play again. I've never had that experience or that need or want. Tell me about it. Some people say, are you sure he's all in?
Hey, you know me. I live in the damn darkness every day.
Yep.
Right. So I'm not one to rank on that. And there's so much I do for my mental health, so I can't. I'm never.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just wondering about motivation.
No, yeah. So it's just, I think he went into that. Do I want to play for the Packers? And like I just said, he figured out a way to be so angry with the Packers, to come out of it and say, no, I was going to retire, but now he's got this extra motivation against the Packers there. I think the Jets are going to be the ones who relish in that as a result.
Jay, you know time. We got about 30 seconds. You saw that last segment. We talked about kids need motivation. They get depressed. Can they get something out of your book because you talk about Unbreakable?
Absolutely. First of all, you have somebody else like me giving you words, and you don't feel so alone anymore. And I talk about it in layman's terms. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your teacher. I'm not your doctor. I'm just a dude who's messed up, who's learned how to be good with his men, if you will. So, yes, and I love what the doctor said. Like, if you could take working out and put it in a pill form, be the greatest antidepressant ever.
All right. It's a great book. Jay, congratulations on all your success. UFC, football, there's nothing you can't do. Jay, thank you.
Thank you, bro.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the instant analysis. That's all for us tonight. We hope you have a great evening. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're not done here at Fox. We're just getting started in prime time. Sean Hannity, the great Sean Hannity, live audience. Everyone's been screened. They're happy and they're smiling.